Marcus's knuckles ached as they scraped against the rough stone of the subterranean arena's wall. A trickle of blood traced a path down his fingers, but the physical sting was nothing compared to the burning in his gut. His gaze was locked on the gaping emptiness of his locker, the place where 50,000 credits should have been resting, the culmination of 6 grueling months. That treacherous, two-faced, he slammed his fist against the wall again, the thud echoing through the deserted locker room, a counterpoint to the fading roars of the crowd above. His phone buzzed, another debt collector. The third one today. A bitter laugh escaped Marcus's lips as he scanned the message, payment overdue, 24 hours to comply, consequences severe. Victor, his supposed partner, had played him like a fiddle. 6 months of shared fights, of manufactured camaraderie, all culminating in this grand betrayal. Victor had vanished with the winnings while Marcus was still basking in the afterglow of victory. The worst part? Marcus knew he should have anticipated it. Victor had been too eager, too accommodating when he'd appeared, offering partnership at the exact moment Marcus's debts had become insurmountable. Footsteps resonated from the corridor outside, snapping Marcus back to reality. He tensed, flattening himself against the wall beside the locker room door. 2 shadows materialized beneath the door's gap. "Check the locker room," a gruff voice commanded. "The boss wants him found tonight." Marcus held his breath as the door creaked open. A hulking man in a dark suit entered, one hand disappearing inside his jacket. Marcus didn't wait to see what the man was reaching for. He exploded forward, his shoulder slamming into the man's chest. They tumbled through the doorway, colliding with the second man, who was already fumbling for a weapon. Marcus seized his disoriented assailant and hurled him towards his companion. The 2 men crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs. Marcus sprinted past them, his boots pounding the concrete floor. "Stop!" A chorus of shouts pursued him as he rounded a corner. He knew these tunnels like the back of his hand. Years spent fighting in this underground circuit had made him intimately familiar with every nook and cranny. The old maintenance access was just ahead, a conduit to the abandoned Sector 7 ruins. A blast of energy whizzed past his head, leaving the sharp scent of ozone in its wake. Marcus dove through the access door, slamming it shut and jamming his belt through the handles. It wouldn't hold them for long. The shaft was shrouded in darkness. Marcus navigated by feel, counting his steps, 20 paces to the junction, then left towards the ruins. His pursuers' shouts faded as he descended further into the city's forgotten underbelly. After 10 minutes of traversing the darkness, he emerged into a cavernous chamber. Pale moonlight seeped through cracks in the distant ceiling, illuminating decaying columns and archaic machinery. This had once been some kind of research facility, back before the economic collapse. "End of the line," he muttered, scanning the chamber for any viable options. The debt collectors would find him eventually. And when they did, a soft, cerulean glow caught his attention. It emanated from an alcove nestled between 2 fallen pillars. Strange symbols pulsed with an otherworldly light. Marcus approached cautiously. The symbols were arranged in a circle around what appeared to be a doorway etched into the wall. Except there was no door. Just a smooth stone surface. "What the?" He extended a hand towards one of the glowing marks. A jolt of energy surged through his arm, a sensation like an electric shock. The symbols flared a brilliant blue. The stone within the frame rippled like water. Shouts echoed from the maintenance shaft. They were closing in. Marcus glanced at the shimmering portal, then back towards the approaching voices. Certain death behind him, the unknown ahead. He drew a deep breath. Can't be worse than here, he thought, and stepped through. The world dissolved into a blinding flash of light and a dizzying sensation of vertigo. Marcus felt as though he was being simultaneously stretched and compressed. His stomach lurched. Then, abruptly, he was falling. He landed hard, rolling to disperse the impact. Cold stone pressed against his cheek. The air was thick with a strange, metallic sweet scent. Marcus pushed himself to his knees, blinking to clear his vision. His jaw dropped. Mark winced as another wave of nausea washed over him. The strange, metallic sweet scent of the air made his stomach churn. He pushed himself to a sitting position, leaning against the cold, unfamiliar stone. The chamber was vast, circular, and unlike anything he'd ever seen. Crystalline pillars reached towards a domed ceiling that shimmered with an inner light. Strange devices hummed along the walls, glowing with the same cerulean energy he'd seen in the ruins back on Earth. But it was the figure on the raised platform in the center of the chamber that truly captivated him. She stood with her back to him, her hands moving gracefully as she manipulated streams of luminescent energy that floated and danced in the air. Her skin was a deep, vibrant violet, reflecting the chamber's ethereal light. Long, ebony hair cascaded down her back, and two elegant horns curved upwards from her temples. Mark must have made some involuntary sound, because she turned abruptly. He gasped. Her face was strikingly beautiful, with high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that literally glowed with an inner light. She wore a close-fitting garment that somehow managed to be both revealing and elegant. Her expression shifted from surprise to disdain as their eyes met. "A human," she said, her voice musical yet cold. "How did you get here?" Mark scrambled to his feet, keeping his movement slow and non-threatening. "Portal. In some ruins. I was in a bit of a rush and didn't exactly read the terms and conditions." She descended the platform steps with fluid grace. "The ancient gateway. Interesting. It hasn't activated in centuries." She circled him slowly, studying him like a curious specimen. "You're a fighter. I can see it in your stance, your scars." Her nose wrinkled slightly. "Though not a very successful one, judging by your current state." "Hey, I win some," Mark retorted, turning to keep her in his sight. "Just had a rough night. I'm Mark, by the way." He added, "I don't recall asking your name." She completed her circuit and stood before him. Up close, she was tall, almost his height. "I am Lyra," she stated, "last princess of the alchemical kingdom. And you are trespassing in my sanctum." "Sorry about that," Mark said, glancing around. "I can leave if you point me towards the exit. Though I'm guessing I'm not in Kansas anymore." "Kansas?" She arched an elegant eyebrow. "An Earth reference?" "Never mind," he said, studying her more carefully. Despite her haughty demeanor, he sensed a hint of loneliness in her eyes. "So, alchemical kingdom, huh? That what all this is?" He gestured at the floating energy streams. "This is but a fraction of our former glory," she said, bitterness creeping into her voice. "Before the wars, before the betrayals, we ruled half this world through our mastery of alchemical science." She turned away, walking back towards the platform. "Now I alone remain to preserve our knowledge." Mark followed, curiosity overriding caution. "That's rough. Being the last of your kind." Suddenly, energy crackled around him. He was slammed against a pillar, held immobile by bands of blue light. Lyra stood with one hand raised, her eyes blazing. "Do not presume familiarity, human. I don't need your pity." The bands tightened. "Perhaps I should simply dispose of you now. Intruders in my sanctum don't usually survive long." Mark forced himself to stay calm even as the pressure increased. "That seems a bit hasty. Maybe we could discuss this like reasonable people." "Over coffee? Though, I'm guessing you're more of a tea person." Her eyes narrowed, then widened in surprise. The energy bands around Mark were fading, absorbed into his body. He felt a tingling sensation, followed by a surge of strength. Lyra lowered her hand, studying him with new interest. "Fascinating. Your body naturally absorbs alchemical energy. I've never seen anything like it in a human." The bands dissipated completely. Mark rolled his shoulders, testing his freedom. "Is that unusual? Most beings exposed to raw alchemical power are destroyed by it." A calculating look entered her eyes. "You're weak. Pathetically so, by our standards. But this ability, you might be useful." "Thanks, I think," Mark said, giving her his best roguish grin. Though I usually prefer dinner before discussing usefulness. She ignored his quip. I propose a contract. I will protect you in this world. Believe me, you'll need it. And I will teach you to harness your gift. In return, you will serve me. The power you gain will be mine to command. Serve you? Mark crossed his arms. That's a pretty one-sided deal, princess. The alternative is death, she said, a sweet, chilling smile playing on her lips. This world devours the weak. Without my protection, you won't survive a day. Mark watched Eliza stride across the training chamber, the cerulean glow of the alchemical devices reflecting in her violet skin. It had been a week since their first sparring session, a week since he'd nearly been incinerated by her casual display of power. Now, he stood ready, gauntlets humming with absorbed energy, waiting for her next lesson. You're improving, she conceded, summoning a swirling vortex of energy in her hand. But still too slow. She launched the vortex at him. He dodged, the energy sizzling past his ear. The council won't give you time to think. The council, he grunted, rolling to his feet. They don't look nearly as distracting as you do. Eliza's only response was another volley of energy, faster this time, forcing him to absorb what he couldn't evade. The power surged through him, a familiar burn, but he held his ground. Better, she admitted, a flicker of something like approval in her glowing eyes. Though your control is rudimentary. Follow me. She led him to a chamber he hadn't yet seen, filled with ancient, humming machinery. At the center, on a pedestal, floated two gauntlets, crafted from a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. These, Eliza explained, her voice hushed, belong to my people's greatest warriors. They amplify alchemical power, allowing the wearer to channel it in unprecedented ways. Mark approached the pedestal, drawn to the gauntlet's strange beauty. Intricate patterns of energy pulsed across their surface. And you're showing me these now because they kill most who try to wield them. Eliza deactivated the energy field containing the gauntlets. The power overwhelms them, burns them from the inside. She met his gaze, her eyes intense. But your ability to absorb energy, you might be compatible. Might? Mark couldn't resist a grin. Are you worried you'd miss me if they reduce me to ash? A flicker of something crossed her face, too quick to decipher. Don't be dramatic. I've invested far too much in your training to let you die now. Put them on. Hesitation warred with curiosity. He reached for the gauntlets, a strange warmth emanating from them as he slipped them on. A surge of power ripped through him, an agonizing jolt that felt like 1,000 electric shocks. His vision blurred, white-hot pain searing his nerves. He staggered, the world tilting. Then Eliza was there, her hands on his face, her cool energy flowing into him, steadying the chaotic power. Breathe, she commanded, her voice cutting through the agony. Make it yours. He focused on her words, on the familiar sensation of her energy, and slowly, agonizingly, the pain receded. The gauntlet's power settled into a steady thrum, resonating with his own. Well, he said, his voice shaky, that was intense. Eliza stepped back, a visible wave of relief washing over her. Try not to sound so pleased with yourself. The real work begins now. Hours blurred into a relentless cycle of training. Eliza pushed him harder than ever, the gauntlets amplifying his strength, his speed, his ability to absorb and redirect energy. By the end, exhausted but exhilarated, he managed to create crude energy constructs, pale imitations of Eliza's, but a testament to his rapidly growing power. Enough, Eliza finally declared, a hint of pride in her voice. You're adapting faster than I expected. You sound surprised, Mark panted, flexing his gauntleted hands. I thought impossible was becoming my specialty. Don't get overconfident, she warned, a faint smile playing on her lips. Tomorrow, we. The chamber doors burst open, a servant rushing in, his face pale. Princess! Trouble in the market district. Orin is there, demanding to speak with you. Eliza's expression hardened. That brute. What does he want? He challenges your right to rule. Says you've grown weak, consorting with otherworlders. The servant cast a nervous glance at Mark. He demands a trial by combat. I'll handle this. Eliza started towards the door, but Mark caught her arm. No. Let me. She turned, her eyes flashing. This isn't your fight. It became my fight, Mark said, his grip tightening, when he made it about us. Besides, he added, a glint in his eye, didn't you say I needed real combat experience? They stared at each other, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Eliza's lips curved into a dangerous smile. Very well. But if you die, I'll bring you back just to kill you myself. Deal. Mark pulled her close, kissing her quickly. Any advice? Don't lose, she said, her hand lingering on his chest. And Mark, make him regret questioning my choices. The rhythmic hum of the alchemical machinery filled the training chamber, a counterpoint to the rhythmic thud of Mark's gauntlet striking Eliza's energy shields. Weeks had passed since Orine's challenge, weeks of relentless training, pushing the boundaries of his newfound abilities. He could feel the power coursing through him, stronger, more controlled than ever. Again, Eliza commanded, her voice crisp, her violet skin shimmering with exertion. She launched another volley of energy projectiles, faster this time, testing his reflexes. He weaved through them, absorbing what he couldn't avoid, the familiar tingling warmth spreading through his body. Predictable, she critiqued, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. You're relying too much on absorption. What happens when you face an opponent whose power you can't contain? Before Mark could answer, the chamber doors hissed open, revealing a flustered servant. Princess Eliza, he stammered, bowing deeply. Urgent message from Earth. Eliza's expression hardened. Earth? How? Mark felt a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. He hadn't thought about Earth much since arriving, too caught up in the whirlwind of this new world, this new life. But the mention of it brought back a flood of memories, the debts, the desperation, the life he'd left behind. The servant presented a small, shimmering device. It appeared in the receiving chamber. Marked for the Lalian princess and her human toy. He winced at his own words. Eliza's eyes narrowed dangerously. Toy, she repeated, her voice laced with ice. Mark held his breath, bracing for an outburst, but she surprised him. She snatched the device, her fingers crackling with energy. Let's see what my admirers have to say. The device projected a holographic image, a familiar face, one Mark hadn't seen in months, but instantly recognized. Victor, his former partner, the man who'd betrayed him and left him for dead. He looked older, harder, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. Well, Marcus, or is it a marker now, he sneered. Heard you've gone upscale. Alien princess, fancy gauntlets, living the high life. He leaned closer, his eyes glinting. Too bad it's about to end. Eliza's hand tightened around the device, her knuckles white. What do you want? She demanded, her voice dangerously calm. Victor chuckled, a grating sound. What do I want? Let's just say I'm not the only one who's interested in your unique abilities, princess. And your human pet's peculiar talent for absorbing energy. We've made a deal. They get you, I get him. Everyone wins. They? Eliza questioned, her eyes narrowing. Let's just say they're people with resources. People who know how to exploit valuable assets. Victor glanced at Mark, his smirk widening. They're on their way, princess. Enjoy your last few hours of freedom. It was entertaining knowing you. The image flickered and died. A heavy silence descended on the chamber. Mark felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about Eliza, about their burgeoning empire, about the fragile peace they'd established. He turned to her, his voice low. Who are they? Eliza's expression was unreadable. an organization known as the Obsidian Syndicate. They dabble in acquisitions. Anything valuable, anything powerful. They've been a thorn in my side for years. She turned away, her gaze distant. They're ruthless, well-equipped, and they have agents everywhere. And Victor? Mark pressed. A pawn, she dismissed, her voice laced with contempt. Easily manipulated, easily discarded. He'll get his reward soon enough. We have to leave, Mark said urgently. Now. Before they arrive. Eliza turned back to him, a strange light in her glowing eyes. Leave? And go where? They have eyes everywhere. Running solves nothing. She stepped closer, her hand resting on his gauntleted arm. We fight. But we don't know how many they're sending, what kind of technology they have. Then we prepare, she interrupted, her voice firm. We use every advantage we have. We turn this sanctum into a fortress. A fierce determination hardened her features. They want a war? I'll give them a war they won't forget. Mark met her gaze, feeling a surge of adrenaline. He knew she was right. Running was futile. They had to stand and fight. He tightened his grip on her hand, his own resolve hardening. Then let's get to work, princess. He grinned, a reckless glint in his eye. I've always been fond of impossible odds. The Obsidian Syndicate's attack had been swift and brutal, a coordinated assault on multiple levels of Eliza's sanctum. Mark fought alongside her, the gauntlets humming with absorbed energy as he deflected plasma blasts and shattered obsidian drones. Eliza moved like a vengeful goddess, her power tearing through their ranks, leaving trails of sparking wreckage and stunned mercenaries. The fighting was fierce, the sanctum's crystalline architecture cracking under the onslaught. But for every drone they destroyed, two more seemed to appear. They're relentless, Mark grunted, deflecting a blast that would have vaporized a lesser being. Where are they all coming from? They have a network of hidden portals, Eliza replied, her voice tight with strain. Scattered throughout the city. We'll never hold them all off. She gestured to a section of wall that shimmered and dissolved, revealing a darkened corridor. The emergency escape route. It leads to the abandoned subway tunnels. We have to go. Leave? Mark hesitated. What about the sanctum, your research, all this? He gestured at the chamber, at the glowing machinery humming defiantly amidst the chaos. It can be rebuilt, Eliza said, her eyes meeting his. But we can't. Not if we stay here. She took his hand, her touch sending a jolt of warmth through his gauntleted fingers. Come on. We'll regroup, plan our counterattack. We'll take back what's ours. They fought their way to the escape route, the gauntlets glowing fiercely as Mark cleared a path. The tunnel was dark, the air thick with dust and the scent of ozone. Eliza summoned a sphere of light, illuminating crumbling walls and rusted rails. The sounds of battle faded as they descended deeper into the city's forgotten underbelly. We can't stay hidden forever, Mark said after a while, breaking the silence. The syndicate will find us eventually. I know, Eliza replied, her voice thoughtful. Which is why we're not hiding. We're going on the offensive. Offensive? Mark raised an eyebrow. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and currently residing in a dilapidated subway tunnel. What kind of offensive are we talking about? Eliza smiled, a dangerous glint in her eye. The kind that makes them regret ever setting foot in my kingdom. She stopped, her gaze fixed on something further down the tunnel. Here we are. They reached a large chamber, a forgotten station where rusted trains lay decaying on the tracks. But it wasn't the trains that caught Mark's attention. It was the group of figures waiting for them, figures shrouded in cloaks, their faces hidden in shadows. Who are they? Mark asked, his hand instinctively tightening on one of the gauntlets. Allies, Eliza replied, her voice calm. Old allies. Ones who owe me a few favors. She stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. The syndicate wants a war? Then let's give them one they won't forget. The figures emerged from the shadows, revealing themselves to be a diverse group, warriors with shimmering scales, creatures with glowing eyes, and others that defied easy description. They were the remnants of a rebellion Eliza had aided years ago, a rebellion against the very forces that now threatened her rule. And they were ready for payback. The following weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Eliza, with Mark by her side, rallied her allies, forging alliances with factions who had long chafed under the Syndicate's oppressive control. They gathered intelligence, mapped out the Syndicate's network of portals, and devised a strategy that would strike at the heart of their power. Mark, with the gauntlets amplifying his abilities, proved to be a formidable asset, training Eliza's allies in new combat techniques and demonstrating the devastating potential of combined alchemical and earth-based technology. The culmination of their efforts was a coordinated assault on the Syndicate's headquarters, a heavily fortified citadel located in the heart of the city. The battle was epic, a clash of alchemical power, advanced technology, and raw, untamed magic. Mark fought alongside Eliza, the gauntlets blazing with absorbed energy as they tore through the Syndicate's defenses. Eliza, wielding the full force of her alchemical mastery, commanded the battlefield, turning the tide of the fight with displays of power that left even her allies awestruck. The Syndicate's forces, caught off guard by the ferocity and coordination of the attack, crumbled under the onslaught. Victor, seeking to regain Eliza's favor and perhaps save his own skin, appeared during the final stages of the battle, offering information that led to the capture of the Syndicate's leader. He hoped for a pardon, a chance to return to Eliza's good graces. Instead, she simply smiled, a chillingly sweet smile that sent shivers down his spine. "Thank you for your contribution, Victor," she said, her voice laced with ice. "I'll be sure to mention your loyalty to the authorities." She turned away, leaving him to the mercy of her guards. With the Syndicate's leadership captured and their forces scattered, the city erupted in celebration. Eliza, standing on a balcony overlooking the cheering crowds, her violet skin glowing in the light of the triple moons, turned to Mark, her eyes filled with a warmth he hadn't seen before. "We did it," she said, her voice soft. "We won." Mark placed his gauntleted hand on hers, feeling the familiar tingle of alchemical energy flowing between them. "We did it together," he corrected. He looked out at the city, at the people celebrating their newfound freedom, and knew that their journey, their impossible journey, was far from over. He had a kingdom to help rebuild, a princess to protect, and a future to forge, a future filled with both challenges and untold possibilities. And he, the human who had arrived with nothing but debt and desperation, was ready to face it all, with the woman he loved by his side.